Hello, Tony. Welcome to my favorite demos of the Steam Next Fest. I think this is about
Yeah.
11 demos, I think is the arbitrary number. We'll see. So, first up,
Okay.
starting, as you may or may not be able to see, which you can't, is Cat Quest 3. This is an
Yep.
obvious one from
Chapter
me.
3.
Cat Quest is a really relaxing, very simple action role playing game. It's very much based on you do quick attacks and you quickly dodge out of the way of enemies' attacks. You grind XP, you get new gear. It's one of my favorite games to play on Steam Deck. It's very relaxing. And then you can have the ability to shoot a magic attack at your enemies as well. You can do like a magic build. The cool thing about this one, Tony, pirates. You can be a pirate.
Yeah.
So there's this
Gorgeous
looking, like, the graphics are better, the gameplay's better. You get to fly around on a pirate ship and shoot cannonballs at everything. It's really, really cool. I'd highly recommend Cat Quest. It's very well polished. I think this is a cool demo coming from like an obvious, dev who's done this a couple of times before. So Cat Quest 3, one of my favorites of the Steam Next Fest. So definitely check out Cat Quest. Any of the Cat Quest games, honestly, if you haven't played them. And then next up we have possibly my favorite demo of the Next Fest. We have Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo, which, here we go. Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo is a interesting game because I think it was made by Dodgeball Academia, which is like a sports action game, and I thought that looked cool, but I never checked it out. It was like a humble thing, and then going into this, I saw a trailer for this, and I was like, oh, it's like a retro Game Boy Advance looking game with a yo-yo, and I played it, and I was like, this is insanely fun and well made. Holy shit,
Holy guacamole.
It has that like wide aspect ratio as well as like a Game Boy Advance game. Like it has that whole thing of, it has like the view of like a Game Boy game sort of thing, a Game Boy Advance game. And it's not only just like a retro thing, but it's like has insanely interesting mechanics where you have a yo-yo that you can shoot and it bounces off angles, and it's really interesting for combat, but not only for combat, it also makes it really interesting for solving puzzles. And I think that's the really interesting element to Pipistrello, is that it's just engaging in every way. It's like the art's great, the combat's great, the exploration's great, the actual movement and mechanics you get from the, like, you can chuck the yo-yo off the string to hit switches, but then it's like, oh shit, now I don't have my yo-yo, and you have to use like the string like a whip, and you can't actually damage enemies. You have to like stun them, and then, but you can also like throw the yo-yo off and hit like a edge, and then take out a bunch of enemies, and then make it bounce in a way through trajectory to pick it up again. And then there's like different puzzles to solve using those mechanics and stuff. And yeah, it's really interesting. I'd highly recommend it. And then we should go to my next game, which is Bloodless. Tony, have you ever wanted to play a 2D Sekiro where you never attack?
Well, it sounds interesting. Yeah. I didn't know it could be done, but yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah,
the colors as well. Like, I think the color usage is so
Bloodless
good.
feels like a demake of Sekiro in a lot of ways. It is like fast-paced Japanese-ass game where you're just going around trying to parry your opponent to defeat. It's also like, again, use of colors. It's very like black and white, and then the idea is red is like this trigger of blood, like you have like a mysterious past, and for some reason you don't attack. Everyone knows you as this great bloodthirsty samurai, but you don't attack people anymore. You're trying to figure out why, what happened. You're trying to piece together a story while also engaging in some like really interesting fast-paced combat that is very like Souls reminiscent, and it's really fun and fast-paced, and I'd highly recommend Bloodless. It's really, really good. Check out Bloodless if you haven't. And then we have our next demo, which is, I'm doing some live editing. Crypt Custodian is our next game. Crypt Custodian is a Metroidvania game about a cat that's sent to the afterlife, and after going to the temple to find their fate, they accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally destroy some pots and get banished to the eternal afterlife to clean up after other people's messes, and it turns into this combat Metroidvania game where you collect coal in order to buy new abilities, in order to progress through the map. You are a custodian, you're a janitor, you know. Your weapon is like a sweeping brush as you clean up stuff, and it's just very engaging to explore this world, find out what's going on. It's got great art. Also, there's these well system throughout the game that gives you these save points that also give you these easy, quick teleport points that are pretty cool. Just a pretty fun game overall. I'd highly recommend it. Then we have Dungeon Degenerate Gamblers. I think for the description of this one I wrote, it's a roguelike deck building blackjack game. Need I say more? I don't think I do. I mean, it's right up that alley of like a Balatro, you know. You are trying to get to blackjack, and if you can, closer you get to blackjack, the more damage you deal to your opponent, and the less close they are to blackjack, the more damage they take, and vice versa to you. And it features a lot of cards from different games like Gwent and Yu-Gi-Oh! And as like an homage to, it's just a love letter to card games in general, really. Like, it's a pretty fun little roguelike deck builder. But if you have touched a roguelike deck builder before, you'll know exactly what you're getting into with this game. Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers.
Bit of a mouthful.
Hell of an Office is super interesting. Immediately, like, I look at it and I go, it's like Suum, Speedrunners of Hell. It is a speedrunning game that is set inside hell levels of jumping between different platforms with rising lava. And then, in between these sections, you are sent to work in hell, and hell is like an office, and, you know, the devil's your boss. And in between these sections, there's this interesting, almost like Stanley Parable-esque narrative going on, where you're kind of going around this abandoned office where it's very like nonsensical, and you don't really know what's going on, but you're trying to find out a bigger mystery and trying to escape. And I found that the gameplay and the story in between was quite compelling. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. Also, you have a stapler that lets you rocket jump, so
Yeah,
if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Next up, we have I Am Your Beast. I Am Your Beast is the next game from the developers of what was that game called? Anyway, it's an interesting, like, fast-paced El Paso. That was what it called. El Paso Elsewhere, which is like a Mad Max-inspired like shooter. We're back on the shooter crowd again, Tony. We are on like a 3D shooter where it's very like stylistic. The story is only told through mixtape like recordings of conversations you've had with an ex like commander of an army. It seems like you were working for this weird military organization. You've broken up with them because of something happened, and now they're trying to kill you. You're trying to keep them coming into your forest, and it's like very like fast-paced combat. You're trying to go through a level and kill enemies as quickly as possible, sort of thing. Very reminiscent of like a 3D Hotline Miami or something like that.
Super hot Miami.
Super hot without the time stop is what I would say.
Yeah.
Very like fast-paced, fun, frenetic gameplay. You're like, I'm gonna shoot this guy. My clip's empty. I'm gonna throw my gun and blow this guy up and stuff like that. Pretty cool. Then we have Pinball Spire, a Metroidvania pinball game that is very compelling based on its fact of you have this constant sense of progression of climbing a large tower, trying to get to the top, while also introducing new mechanics of, I now have the ability to slow down time to do precision slots, so I now have the ability to choose when I want to bounce by turning into a fireball, but these also have the mechanics of allowing you to light torches, which then unlock the door to the next level, and you have this constant sense of progression and skill expression through pinball, which is a game that I personally don't consider to be a heavy skill expression game, which some people might, but not me.
Until now,
until I played Pinball Spire. It's a very fun game, and it reminds me, like, in terms of gameplay and music, of like early PopCap games. Definitely check this one out if you're interested. Then we have Schim. Schim is a game about platforming from shadow to shadow, and it's told through a story of two boys who grow up together and grow apart as one of them becomes a firefighter, another one gets a boring office job, and you are the shadow of this boy, and you eventually get separated from this boy who's now become a man, and you have to jump from shadow to shadow in order to get back to him. And the way it's done is you can only spend so long out of the shadows before you die. You have like a second out of them, so you are like a shadow frog, and it's almost like Frogger, where you are not dodging cars but using cars in order to like progress across non-shaded areas. And it's almost like a puzzle platformer where it's more about figuring out how you're going to get somewhere more so than the actual act of doing it. So it is very interesting. Speaking of platformers, the big Catch the Tacklebox is a sort of a prelude demo to a very interesting old school style of platform we don't see very much these days. It's very like PSX, almost like Nintendo 64 style, like old school retro platformer.
In both sound, style, everything, I suppose.
The game is very stylized, and so is the move set. Like, it took me a while to learn the moves, but once I learned them, it was very engaging, where it's like, oh, the fishing rod is like a core part of the way your character moves. Like, you use the fishing rod to hook onto things and shoot yourself across the map, but you can also pick up objects and throw them, and there's a lot of interesting like move mechanics. And of course, it's a collectathon with a guy with a fishing rod, so the thing you collect is fish, and you have to like reel them in and catch them, and they, as soon as you pull them out the water, they develop legs, and they start to run away. And you also can use shortcuts with fishing lines. And the actual, like, outside of the tutorial, it's like a big open world thing where you kind of decide where you want to go and what you want to collect. It's very much open, very like not hands-holdy, and it's almost like Souls-likey, where it's like you can unlock campfires and in order to respawn in certain areas, and then you have like shortcuts you can use in order to get back to areas quicker that you've already climbed up. Really engaging thing, and I'm excited to see more on how different the actual main game will be from this like prologue slice of the game sort of thing we got with the tackle box. And then finally we have Wild Bastards, which is a spiritual successor to Void Bastards in a way that is made by the same developers of Void Bastards. It is a FPS sci-fi game that is very heavily systems based, but also features a very strategic like overworld map where you have to decide where you want to go via a constant looming threat of an enemy that chases after you, while also managing the relationships between different characters on your ship. It blends a lot of genres into one game. It's not something you see very often, where you have like this FPS with, you know, oh, I'm doing like turn-based strategy on a map, and I'm going to go here so I can get to this shop to buy new equipment for my character for when I do like the shooting section. It's about like moving and surviving and being part of a gang and fighting authority. Very interesting. Not a game I've seen very often. And if you want to know more about any of these demos, there will be a link to them in the description, and you can see like my full thoughts. This is as concise as I can be about these games, and there's some really interesting ones in there. But I've tried to give you
there's some other ones as well.
A overview of them as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And I will also link in the description my backlogged list page where I have listed every demo I played, and I'll put like a short, like little description of what I thought about it. And I've tried to rank them from my favorite at the top to my least favorite at the bottom. So if you want like a quick overview that you can read through, check out my backlog list as well. And yeah, that was the Next Fest. There were some interesting games. There wasn't a Balatro in this one, you know, a game where it just took over my life. But there was definitely some interesting games, and I'll be back for the next one to go insane playing another 35 demos in like a week. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.